Hi, now it's time to get into some introductory terms about the internet um, and try to answer the general question like, what is the internet? You read in your book, and you can read in other places that the internet sort of began in the 50s and 60s with a military computer and computer systems exchanging packets of information. In the 1980s, we had something called ARPANET, which was a military ancestor of the internet. It was gradually opened to the public. 1992 was the first graphical browser. Back in the late 1990s, when when I first began working on the internet. For me, at that point, the internet, and then for many years afterwards, really became a part-time job and hobby job, but then a real job at one time or another. I was working on web pages in the late 1990s for something called the Mining Company. That before the first internet boom, and when it had all those dozens and dozens and hundreds of IPOs where people got huge amounts of investment money and wasted it, who knows, for the mining company, which later became About.com, which is still around. Strangely, About.com was bought by a magazine conglomerate. Anyway, so I was making web pages and stuff back then, but that experience, the web was so different then. The web today, with the advent of CSS and then now the incredible growth of CSS, is so much more. But what is the web? What is CSS? What are these things? Well, let's take a look. The web, the internet, is a network of connected computers arranged in a cooperative system. Cooperation, that's a key phrase here. They're governed by an agreed upon set of rules and standards called protocols. There's protocols all over the web. Protocol is not the sort of word you use every day, I know, but it is the word that the people who organize this stuff use. It just means rules, standards that we agree upon, like in a committee. We agree upon these protocols. There are protocols for all different ways information is transferred online. For instance, email. Have you ever seen MAP or IMAP? When you're setting up an email account, those are, the P stands for protocol. Internet, mailbox, protocol, so on. And there's a bunch of others, POP accounts, protocol. File transfer protocol, FTP. That's how we use an FTP program to move big files around. Hypertext documents, that P in the HTTP, that's protocol. So protocols are all around the web. Oops, what was that? Let's go again. And what is hypertext in that HTTP? Text on one online document that automatically links to another document. Hypertext is fundamental to the web, or the World Wide Web as it used to be called. So if that's what hypertext is, what is hypertext markup language? Well, that's what HTML means. And you'll be asked this perhaps on a quiz or something. What does HTML stand for? Hypertext markup language. A markup language is not a programming language, really. It means a language that adds information to other information. It'd be like taking a Word document and going through, sort of like by hand, and writing little notes about it. Do this, do that, do this, do that. Make this big, make this smaller, make this a paragraph, make this this, make this that. So you're adding structure to information, adding information about information. That's the base language that things on the web are built in, is HTML. So you're going to be learning HTML, and it is the structure of web documents. It's the structure. I would say it's like the if you're building a house, you've got the 2x4s, you've got the plumbing, you got the wiring, you got all the real structure that makes the house stand up and be strong and work. That's what HTML is. But what about the paint? What about the wallpaper? What about the details? The fancy stuff, the stuff that everybody sees, right? That's what CSS is. Cascading Style Sheets, or CSS, is a style sheet language. So it's another kind of language that describes presentation. It's usually kept separate from the HTML. It might be in the same document in a separate part of it. Later on, we'll see it's usually in a separate document and linked. All right.
We use it to modify HTML documents, describing the HTML documents describe the underlying structure, but CSS describes how that will be presented. CSS controls such things as fonts, colors, background images, page layout. That's CSS. So we look at an extremely basic website, and here's one. I show you this because in one of my next presentations or videos, I'm going to be taking this apart for you. What do we got here? We've got an image, yes. We've got some text, yes. We've got some more text, all right. Another image, some more text, a rule, and some more text. The text, the plain text, if it was just all plain in one font and one size, just sitting there, that would be in the structure, in the HTML. But what makes this bigger? What makes it color? What makes it a different font? The image is in the HTML, but what makes it align a certain way? What makes it do what it's doing and the text that go beside it, right? What makes the margins? That's CSS. So the color, the font, the margins, the presentation, the arrangement is CSS, but the information that says that's a paragraph, that's a heading, that's an image, that's a rule, horizontal rule. That's structure information, and that's HTML. So that division is going to be, it seems like, oh, why is he spending so much time on that? That's going to be really important for these first several weeks, and overall, of course, the idea of keeping structure separate from presentation. So what's a URL? We just saw a URL, right? In Jen's kitchen. It's this stuff up here, right? And something that's in modern browsers usually hidden that comes before this stuff too. The HTTP and so on, right? So URL, we're going to say URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. Some people think it stands for something else. That's okay, but let's just say that. It's generally agreed upon by most people now. Every page and resource on the web has a URL. It is its address, the web address, right? Where the page or the resource is found. In this example that I just showed you, that kitchen thing, right? There it is. That's what happens if you actually go here and select all that and copy it and paste it in an actual document. It would look like this, because the http://www is hidden from you, as most modern browsers sort of hide that stuff. But it's there, right? If you copy and paste it, it'll be there. So http:// that is the protocol, which tells the server to use Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That's what that stands for, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It means, tells your browser, tells the server, get ready to get some web documents or resources. We're doing web stuff, in other words. That's the agreed upon system we're using. www is the host name, which tells the server we're going to use the World Wide Web Network. That's where we're getting it from. We're getting it from a www. We're using that network. Good. The host name. Then we've got the something.com, learningwebdesign.com, jackdowns.com, whatever.com, or .org, or .net, or .edu, right? That suffix could change. In fact, there's actually many of them now. But .com is most common. .org, .edu are very common also. That's the domain name, okay? This specifies the server that we want to reach. So it says, go to this place to get this stuff. We'll tell you in a minute. It really says something different. It really says, go get the number that represents this place and then get this stuff. But let's just say for now, it's like the actual server. Like the computer. Like the actual computer that's hooked up to wires someplace else that's holding that page. That's the server, right? Then beyond that, we might have any number of things, right? We might have a bunch of something before we eventually get to the document name. Or in the case of, we'll see in a minute, in the case of the home page, that might be it. Okay, it might be just something.com. So whether we have some very long string of stuff here or nothing here, right, or almost nothing here, or just a short thing, this stuff that follows the .com is called the directory path. So in other words, it's saying
this is how to get to it. And this literally represents folders. We call them on servers, we call them directories, but it really just means like folders. Like you have folders on a drive, folders on a flash drive, folders on your hard drive. The folder called 4E, and inside there go into a folder called materials. Inside there go into a folder called chapter 02, right? And eventually you get to the something.html or HTM, or in the case of database systems, it might be some other file type, right? But that is the document you're actually retrieving, right? And when you combine the directory path, this whole thing here, with the document, it becomes the absolute path. So that is the path to get to the thing. So we have the path, we have the thing, and then we have the whole thing, which is the absolute path. So you should know those names in general. Now you know when you see a URL what it is. But how come I can just go to plattsburgh.edu, right? I can just go to plattsburgh.edu, and there it is, plattsburgh.edu, and I didn't have to ask for a document. It just came up like this, right? How can that happen? Well, that's because home pages are what we call a default file, right? And that means that's the file it's going to give you if you didn't ask for anything in particular. It's the home page. It's the default file. We don't need a directory path to that. It just usually in examples of our simple just learning systems, that's going to be an index.html. There really is a document there. It's really called index.html, and that is the one that is retrieved if you don't ask for anything else. In the case of complicated systems, it might be index.php or index.asp or default.html or something else. But the generic beginning one is index.html. So we will have that. You will have that in the website, and that means that was what you'll get if you didn't ask for anything. What else do you need to know about? Browsers. Yes, you have a browser. You're using one right now, probably. It's software that requests and interprets web documents or resources. Sometimes we also call it a client. Common browsers are, of course, Internet Explorer, or whatever they're calling themselves now, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Opera, many different mobile ones, many others, special ones that just do reading screens. So there's many different types of browsers or browsers within other things. But I'm going to suggest in this class that you use Chrome or Firefox. I think Chrome is easiest to use for this class when we're looking at the documents that you're making. And then what's a server? A server, the browser sends the information to and receives information from a server. So your browser's on your computer, as mine is right here too, as I'm looking at this while I'm making this video. When I requested that website, like that plattsburgh.edu, right? My computer sent information to a server, another computer, which was holding that page and waiting for me to request it, and then it sent it back here, right? So that server is just a computer running specialized software that serves up web pages and resources. Honestly, the computer is no more high powered than the computer you're using right now. It just has special software that allows it to serve up the web pages. That's why we call it a server. It serves them up. Okay, but when I call for plattsburgh.edu, does it really go out and find the place where plattsburgh.edu is? Not directly exactly. It uses an IP address or an Internet Protocol address. Hey, there's that word protocol again. Every computer and device connected to the Internet has a unique 12-digit identifier called an IP address. So when I ask for plattsburgh.edu, computers don't know words, right? It has to take that name, that domain name, and go to a domain name server, a DNS, domain name server, and say, hey, someone just asked for plattsburgh.edu. What is the IP address for that? It gets the IP address. Then it sends it back to my computer. My computer says, oh yeah, that's this bunch of numbers. And then it says, okay, now I'm going to ask for that bunch of numbers, and then it goes to the server. So there's this little dance that happens. You ask for a domain name. The domain name is sent to a domain name server. It sends back to you an IP address.
The IP address is what you really use to get the information. Let me use a simpler example. Let's go to another college nearby. Let's go to clinton.edu. Okay, good. Here's clinton.edu. Okay, Clinton Community College. Now I'm going to go to something called a domain name, a whois. A whois is a, there's lots of different whois companies. They all use the same database, though. It comes from the same place, from ICANN actually, which is down here. And it's a place where you can put it, you can get the IP address of a company and get lots of other information about the website. So for instance, I'll go to Domain Tools, which is one of the big ones, and I hope this is not terribly slow. It looks like it's going to be okay. They want me to sign up as usual. It's taking a long time. I have an awful lot of tabs open though too, as you see. So we'll just pause for a moment here. Okay, finally, here it is. Sorry, things are running slow today. So I could put in here a domain name or an IP address. I'm going to put in domain name that I just copied, right, which is clinton.edu. I'll put the whole thing in there, and I'll click on search. All right, and this is going to take a minute. It may ask me for, oh, didn't take that long at all. Good. So what did I find out without even being a member or signing up or paying any money or anything? I found out when was this, that this is the domain name is for Clinton Community College. I knew that. I found out who hosts them, where they're hosted. I could find out the address of who to write to about it, who runs it. I could find out lots more information about them. You can do this with any website and find out information about them. And one piece of information you can find is the IP address. And there it is. Yeah, sometimes only the last 3 digits, the last digit is left off, which usually just means it's a 0, and it'll work without it. The last digit is usually implied, but it is a 12-digit number. So what if I grab that IP address? Can I use it? Actually, I could. Just to show you that that really means clinton.edu, I will bring up a new browser tab here, right? I'm going to paste it in, hit enter, and it's going to go to Clinton Community again. Same website. It's not a secure link anymore, and some computers are going to hesitate and then think you're doing something suspicious by doing this, but it's not really. Just want you to see that clinton.edu, this has gone into their rest of their website without that big yellow blob on it right now, but same idea. It's the same thing whether you go to it with that or with, and this has not moved on yet to the other pages, there it is. Same thing. Whether you go to it via the web address or the IP address, it's the same thing. And then you can find out more detailed information through ICANN, which is the International Committee something. ICANN is the kind of like the committee that runs the web, and they're the ones who decide what the domain name, what the IP address for it is. And they're actually the ones that register, in the end, all domain names too. ICANN. I won't go to that link, but you can look at it if you want to. Finally, just reinforces that idea that first we type in the domain name, and then it sends a HTTP request, right, to domain name server that looks up and assembles the file. Well, actually, what it first does is it sends it to a domain name server that sends back the IP address. Then it sends it to the server. It brings back the text. Then it says, oh, but it has images, has style sheets, has to go again and bring more things. So that little page we had, Jen's Kitchen, had many trips to the server. All right. First, what really happens first is that right here is that request goes to the domain name server, where the domain name is resolved to an IP address. The IP address is returned to your computer, and then the HTTP request is sent. And then the text comes back, and then the image, it sends one for the image, it sends one for the next image, it sends one for the style sheet. And then in some much more complicated pages, there could be dozens, hundreds of requests to the server. And that's one of the issues with the web, is that takes time. And we'll read in your text that even the slightest delay, as I was sitting waiting so long for that website earlier, even the slightest delay in a website resolving is going to lose you people. So we're always in this constant
weighing of, I want to have all these things on my page, but I want to really move fast also and to arrive quickly. And we're trying to judge the weigh those things one against another. So that's your information. Some of this will be on a future quiz, these basic internet terms.